Welcome, everyone. Here's a quick book review on the Killer Elite. Interesting little Kindle book you can get. Written about some interesting times I'm going to cover here in a minute. But let's get your fortune for the day. Think of something that is happening in your life, and the jinn will answer.
If it must be, it shall be.
Ooh, makes me shudder.
Okay. And let's make sure we trap any negative spirits in here. Looky out. Okay, let's talk about the elite killers. And of course that sums up pretty much your government murderers. Our Killer Elite by Michael Smith. The inside story of America's most special operation team. Your professional murderers. Those that, of course, are being trained to murder the American public, otherwise known as your special forces. I'm going to do a little video on the SEALs that I met when I was doing some work and security and other places. But that's for another day. But this is a very good book, but it deals with, of course, what's able to be dealt with, which basically is things that are 30, 40 years old in the 80s and everything else. You hear particularly the remote viewers babble about, yeah, we found a submarine stuck in the Mississippi, in 1812. This is the kind of crap you get from McGonigal and those other losers that are trying to get the American public involved in waving the flag, patriotism, so they can pay you nothing and have you develop your own skills. But, you know, the $10 million tank, or maybe is it $10 billion now, your politicians get their little cut from that, but you're a patriot, you work for nothing. And if you're in trouble, don't call us, because we're losers. But it's very interesting when you listen to this. Now, this goes back to the Iran-Contra, little Ronnie Reagan, Mommy, I'm president, what do I do? And all these kind of people that we have out there. So it is something that it goes into what happened in Lebanon when they blew up the barracks where the soldiers were at.
Because what we had was a Tinker Toy fence, and we backed that up with Legos. We thought for sure it could take a bomb hit. It's Legos. They're tough. Put a little glue on them, they stay together forever.
And we go into what's very fascinating, which I've always told people about, the horrific military-industrial complex and the incompetence involved in it, particularly American leadership. The generals, the officers, and all of those people. But remember, they had good people in the military, like Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino and his little satanic buddies who ran around the Presidio in San Francisco in vampire outfits. Goo, goo, goo. Yeah. So, of course, this is the kind of garbage you have. But it's not a funny game because people's lives are destroyed by this. And, of course, now they want more people to have their lives destroyed by the fact that they are going to, of course, want to make sure everybody's draftable so they can go fight in wars for nothing, especially since we're going to have a lot of unemployed people very soon who will be in the soup kitchen line. So they'll all be joining the military to give their lives for nothing. So you can fight a big war like in WW2 with your Nazi General Patton, who was feeding arms to the Hitler Youth and was working with the Nazis, or I should say the fascists, since 1911.
Thank you, Georgie.
So the whole idea is we have all those things that go with that. But of course, you don't believe that, do you?
And the sky ain't blue.
So the whole idea is we have all the things going on like this. It's really appalling. What's been done in Central and South America as we go in and support every little dictator who wants to brutalize their people, and we lose anyway, like we did in Vietnam. Now, there's only been one insurgent war that I am familiar with that's ever been won, and of course, we ignore the people who did that, which was the SAS, or the British, who was able to beat the communist insurgents in Malaysia, which to this day is still a democratic country as far as I know. And so they were able to do that. All other insurgent campaigns have never won. And of course, what I remembered, and got to remember, I'm a Vietnam boy. I was a teenager during that war, and my family was involved to a certain degree. A brother that was a grunt, a Marine, a cowardice Marine, but he was a Marine. I think he hid under rice paddy all that time. But so, I went through that, and I saw on the news every day the body count that our poor American drafted, torn out of school, brought into this shithole to not win. Now, it was always thought, the military said, well,
It's the government, we can't win.
Well, this is true to a degree. They didn't bomb things. They did take and lost a lot of lives taking different objectives, hills and other things. And then a week later, they left. You don't fight wars like that. But of course you do when you have a military officer corps that is dumb as turds. And I hate to insult turds by saying that they're as dumb as the American military in general. Now, America's never really won a war. We've always had assistance from others. So we got to understand that. But, of course, we have won wars.
WW1, WW2,
Kinda. And then, of course, we go back and we give billions of dollars to our enemies, and they put us in front of the guns to be killed, and we think that's wonderful.
They're our buddies. We like their little toys, their radios, their cars, their beer, their crap. And of course, none of them have a military that can fight. No, that's for the Americans to do.
So the whole idea is this is the kind of thing that goes on. And this is particularly perpetrated by the U.S. Officer Corps, who are the dumbest turds you'll ever meet. So the point is, there was apparently a lot of information on how to fight all these kind of insurgent situations. And of course, you don't stand in an enemy's country and don't have proper fortifications. And all the things that go with it. But of course, if you're in Germany and Ramstein,
They'll build a mall there for $50 billion. Because the Air Force, the cowards they are, the people like Scott Ritter's father and him, can go buy in a mall because they're afraid to go into the town.
unbelievable. And that's a fact, people. I'm going to talk about that in another video. But the whole idea is that these are the kind of things that go on. But it's very interesting to show how bumbling the CIA is, how they didn't coordinate, how there's jealousy between every military group, and how they don't want to work together.
I could. My turds are bigger than your turds.
This is the kind of nonsense that goes on, and particularly from a very bad leadership and the kind of turds that are your military officers, the cowards, the traitors, the Nazis that they are, that will work for others. So all of the things that come into it, but this book highlights that. It talks about all the operations, how the people were infighting, how they really, in this particular time and age, which I guess was the 80s, of how there really wasn't a very coordinated, quote, special forces. They didn't really know what they were doing, and people that did, like the SAS, the Brits, apparently weren't used or consulted very much. And of course, remember, we have no European allies. We don't have a trade agreement with a single country in Europe, including the Brits, who have all sorts of problems with trade agreements, apparently. They want our money, of course, but, they've never really liked the Americans. The British go back hundreds of years of torturing, and killing Americans as they did in the colonies, the 13 British colonies that founded the United States, something else that people don't know. And of course, all the things that go with that, and they've never really supported us. But of course, we've saved their bottom in 2 giant world wars and continue to do that. So they do seem to participate. If there's any action going on, generally, the British, with their tiny army, smaller than the entire military of the UK, is less than the United States Marine Corps, which is the smallest group of American troops. They are less than that one group of Navy people, because that's what the Marines are. So we don't even have agreements. You know, we want to shed blood and blow up the world, but don't bring your little biscuits into our country, mate. We don't like your chickens. This is the kind of garbage that goes on while the British, the Australians, the New Zealandites, all should be working together to face the basically fascist EU, which is trying to destroy the United States and anybody that works with them. But the Brits are too dumb to do that. So we can't agree on washing your chickens in chlorine. You know that oxygenating salt you put together? Oh, it's terrible. But let's take every possible nerve toxin you can get, because all the artificial sweeteners are 100% legal and in everything. So this kind of nonsense goes on and on and on. Just never seems to resolve, and it never will be. I'm not really sure what the problems are there. I don't know what the idiot Americans are doing. And certainly the arrogant Brits who've sold their country to the Germans, all their food stores, Rolls Royce, Jaguar, you name it, it's Franz and Hans on it. Goo goo goo. Only 60,000 civilians were killed in World War II with the Blitz. Means nothing to me, mate. Can I have another beer? So the whole idea is this is the kind of garbage we run into. So it's very interesting to hear the details, the backbiting, you know, all the stooges that are involved in El Salvador and other things that worked for. And of course, we had American Special Forces down there that taught people how to torture. There's books on it, how to break legs, how to properly rape, all the fun things you learn in officer candidate school or Special Forces school. And I will talk about that. And I talked to Special Forces, a Navy SEAL who proved he was a SEAL, apparently, that unless he got those badges off the net, of how they used to torture people. So we'll get into that. I'll talk about what kind of psychotic people they are. So all of that kind of stuff, nobody really followed through with properly. And we were going through this transition period with having all these problems. Of course, we shouldn't be in these countries to begin with in any way whatsoever. We're there for no reason of national security, and we should only be in places where it's national security, which the United States has never, ever been attacked except once by our allies. Or maybe many times. Isn't the creation of the EU an attack on the United States? Yeah, I think so. And all the other things that are done with the cowardice, traitorous European attitude, who, by the way, almost every country in Europe was neutral during World War II. They were invaded anyway.
But they were, we're not going to die. We're going to bend over and spread our cheeks for the Nazis. Yeah, Belgium, Holland, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland fought for the Nazis. And they still have flags for the Air Force using swastikas. They're our buddies. They're in NATO now. Get ready to die for them, people, when they draft you from the U.S. to go fight for these scum buckets.
World War II was won by the Russians, and I'm going to talk about that as well. But the bottom line, it's a very interesting little book for those people who are looking for what was the inside deal. The problem is this is so long ago that I don't think there's too much interest in it in general. But it certainly does give you the background of that. If you're an older person like myself, this fills in a lot what was happening with Ronnie Reagan, who was pretty much senile before he even took over the presidency. I went to school in Santa Barbara, where his ranch was, and people used to work there. and everything else. And everybody was talked about the fact of basically how senile it was. He couldn't even get on his own horse. He needed 14 guys and a crane to get him up there. But it is very interesting as we go into the details of this. The bombing of this, all the criminal activity of the CIA, their incompetency of how they can't fix anything properly, work any operations, the incompetency that happened in Grenada. Of course, Grenada, that British island, who just let the Cubans come in there. Ma, what they're busy drinking our tea. We certainly can't do that, you know. Harpool. So the whole idea, and of course that was almost a completely botched operation. Where a group of, I believe they were Rangers, were actually dropped right on top of the Cuban army at the airport there. Again, incompetency. That's the reason why most countries, like Israel, you plan the operation, you go on it. You screw it up, you die with the rest. Not in America. I'm in cases, I'm here eating my barbecue, drinking crap beer, and who cares what happens? So this is the kind of nonsense that you get into. But very interesting book going into all these details if you're into that. But you have to be into it. It's old news. There's nothing overly updated in the book. But it does talk about Delta Team, but also talks about the big botched operation to save the hostages in Iran by the great special forces in the United States who couldn't get that going properly. Where they had problems and had to abort the mission, and of course they were going to go in again, try again. Yeah, kind of like Texas. Well, we lost the Alamo and hundreds of other towns like that. Let's keep trying. So the whole idea is that these are the kind of things you run into. So it is pretty fascinating information to see what's going on, and kind of frightening the incompetency level of government, the CIA, and everyone else. They're real good at harassing American citizens, getting the money that they need for their criminal operations, having huge bank accounts full of money for themselves. These are the people that are running the world, the United States, with bankers, the mafia, every possible criminal organization you can think of. They're all working with the CIA, as we all know. Participating in the assassination of John F. Kennedy, working in general with organized crime. All this has been documented. And we know right now the problems that Donald Trump is having has been pretty much and totally pushed by the Central Intelligence Agency that don't like him because he didn't bend over and do what they said he was due. And he didn't like the fact that they were running the country. Now, Kennedy was the first one that didn't like the CIA and asked why the CIA, an informational gathering organization, was arming itself and operating like a military. And of course, it was JFK who started the Special Forces, thinking that we needed better training and different training. That was never really done all that well. And of course, the Special Forces, which tend to be overly praised, started in Vietnam, the Green Berets. And of course, these are valiant people in their own way. But the bottom line is that that's like saying that the head of the mafia is a valiant warrior. The bottom line is they're criminals. Are we going to give them credit? So the problem is that all military is fighting for a political system, and whoever the government is, they're not fighting for the U.S. Constitution, and this needs to change. You should be fighting for your country and your people, not for a political system, no matter whom that is, whether it's the corrupt Democrats or the corrupt Republicans or someone in between. I believe the Libertarians recently appointed a transsexual as their head. So we all know where everybody's going. So the bottom line is that we have to be very, very aware of what's going on. This kind of should fill in the pieces to let you understand what's really happening. And what's going on now is worse than what's going on then. And this is an elite group of murderers. They train people to kill and murder civilians. These people come back. They're put into the police department and into all the other agencies, particularly the law enforcement agencies, and have filled them up. This started God knows when it started, but certainly was very prevalent in Vietnam, because one of the jobs that the veterans used to come back and get was police officers. I had one living in my condominium complex, a really piece of garbage who was a Vietnam vet, and a nasty little cop who I hope is dead by now. So the whole idea is, this is what happens. Wake up, people. As I said, this is a book if you want to look for something interesting. You can get this on Kindle, and of course, when you get these Kindle Unlimited books, you get them very inexpensive. You can get many books per month. It's a great way to get information. And of course, most Kindle books you can put on Read to You, so you can actually have it as an audio book without spending the money that a lot of these audio books cost. Hope you'd enjoyed. Until next time.